arguably, by voracious reading of the Bible, Aesop's fables, Shakespeare, Burns' poetry. Here's a man who taught himself the law, reading books. He knew the Northwest Ordinance, for example, since he was in Illinois. He knew Magna Carta. He knew all the organic law in his heritage. This is a man who read voraciously. His words, and this is the only president about whom you can say this, his words become canonical. They're in the Norton Anthology of English Literature, for Pete's sake. No other president has words in the Norton Anthology of English Literature. He ranks with the very greatest writers of English prose. Churchill would be an analogy with another person who was a statesman and had a career in politics to do this. So yes, no formal schooling, but a brilliant education. He overcame the lack of credentials. This through sheer brilliance of study. It's nasty. The third thing that Abraham Lincoln had to overcome was a lack of political connections and family connections that would inherited wealth to get him on the road to the White House. When you're talking about that geographic isolation, it's compounded by just a hard scrabble existence that his family went through. When Samuel Lincoln comes to the United States, the future United States, British colony in those days, in 1637, comes to Massachusetts, there's great hope for the Lincoln family. They're going to amass a considerable amount of land. They're going to spread out the Lincolns. They're going to move around. But I'm telling you, the line of descent to Abraham Lincoln was a tough one, because when Abraham Lincoln's grandfather, who was named Abraham, was killed by an Indian in an Indian ambush on his land, it set back the family tremendously, because Abraham Lincoln's father, the son of the man who was killed, did not enjoy legal protection to inherit the portion of the land that would have come to him. His older brother, Mordecai, under the laws of primogeniture, got all of the land. So this child of the grandfather, Abraham Lincoln, had to start all over again. And this is Thomas Lincoln we're talking about. He had to start as though he were Samuel Lincoln back in 1637, just starting out in the New World. Thomas Lincoln does learn some skills as a cabinet maker, but he's going to have tough luck after tough luck story on the frontier. They're in Kentucky. The land does not fall under the Jeffersonian township and range system. He chooses land. Talk about tough luck. He chooses land that's going to be contested by other property owners. There's not clear title to the land. Lincoln's father has to move. It is said that he has, at his peak of his wealth, he has 2 horses and maybe a piece of land that he can have title to, clear title to. That's the tough luck that Lincoln's family was going through. So Abraham Lincoln truly grows up in a poverty that we're going to come to back to in a few minutes. But there's nothing in the family to pass on to him. There are no political connections here. If you were to take a snapshot or just a rendering of young Abraham Lincoln, saying about 1812, 1813, 1814, this kid way out on the frontier with no family connections to power, no inheritable wealth, geographic isolation, no education in his future, no formal schooling whatsoever, and you'd say, that kid's going to go to the White House. People look at you as though you're touched, daft. You're kidding. No way. So Lincoln is going to have to overcome this. And how does he do it? He does it through dint of hard work, the way so many generations of Americans have done it. He has to go out and he has to hustle. He works hard to learn the law. It doesn't hurt that he marries a woman who's extremely ambitious for him. Mary Todd is somebody who wants Lincoln to go far. If Mary Todd had lived after women became more powerful in our society, she would be something like Hillary Clinton. No kidding. That'd be the analogy. Mary Todd would have wanted to run for president. She was very ambitious. Her family had connections with Henry Clay. Clay was a virtual mentor, his ideas in the American system to Abraham Lincoln. So Mary Todd wanted her husband to go places. So he married very strategically in that sense. Difficult though the marriage was. Maybe we'll have time to talk about that. So he's got this handicap of not having the credentials, the political connections really. But those are some of the sort of the structural things around him that would influence his life. Abraham Lincoln had to overcome something else. A couple of more things. Fourth and fifth thing that I want to tell you about were more about his person. Abraham Lincoln had to overcome the fact that he knew he was ugly. He knew he was an ugly man. He did not have a comely face. He did not have the kind of appearance that people just were naturally attracted to. It wasn't like a George Washington who developed those thighs from riding. Have you ever noticed how Washington stands there in those poses and with his right leg sticking out? You know why he does that? Men in those days were proud of their thighs. Yes, because it showed they were great horsemen. So he's standing there like this, very proud. That's the thigh he wants you to look at. Abraham Lincoln was tall. He was awkward, gawky. His ears stuck out. People think later that he had Marfan syndrome, which would cause some of the physical appearance that he has. Abraham Lincoln had to overcome this handicap, and he did it in two ways, basically. Besides being a really smart guy who was able to advance professionally, he had a real way with stories and humor. Those were the two things that he used to attract people to him. He realized, isn't this what we tell kids if we're teachers say? I mean, we know that the kids who are not the beautiful people sometimes have to develop something else from inside. And they develop that great natural ability to relate to people. It's like what my mama taught me, the two kinds of people who come in the room. And the first kind of person comes into the room and they're feeling real cocky, they're very self-centered, and here I am, coming into the room, and you can't wait to get to know me. And there's the second kind of person, comes into a room, they come into a room, they look at you and they say, there you are, and you, and you, and I can't wait to get to know you. It's the second kind of person. That's Abraham Lincoln. He wants to reach out to people. There's an instinct, a very strong social instinct in him. And he wants to entertain them and please them through his stories. He very much wants to show them, I think, sort of the ironies of the human condition. This is why he had such a great eye, even from an early age. Now, he's a little bit sacrilegious. I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but Abraham Lincoln is unusual, and his parents were very, very religious folks. Abraham Lincoln, for whatever reason, seems to have rejected religion from a very early age and only becomes more religious as time goes on. I would say he starts out as probably something between an atheist and an agnostic as a teenager, and then he becomes an agnostic, then he becomes a general theist. It's only by the very end of his life, say the last 5 to 6, 7 years of his life, where he really, he's not a church-going man ever, but he really starts to grapple with what the divine is. But when he's a kid, and his parents drag him off to church, he comes back, and he will gather all the kids around him. One of the things he did, remember, he's developing his personality. One of the things he's doing is he's invited kids then to listen to him, and he will summarize the sermon that he just heard, word for word. Apparently he had a prodigious memory. But also, he would weave in sarcasm, his little comments like, yeah, that's right, and do all kinds of things to get the audience, in this case, his chums, to laugh, to mock, and to go along with him. This was Abraham Lincoln's youth. So he learned early on that he had this ability as a raconteur to do wonderful things with the human word, the voice.